everyone. Welcome to Sisters Sit Down. My name's Kasey.
Hey, my name's Cameron.
And today we are sitting down with our mom, Natalie.
Woo. Where's the camera?
You can pretty much just look at us.
Okay.
If you start to look at the cameras, you will get overwhelmed.
We're off to a great start already.
If you start to look at the cameras, you will be overwhelmed.
For record, your camera is right here.
Okay, so I didn't know where to look.
Well, it's like a conversation, so
Okay,
pretty much just
so
look
just
at me or
looking at y'all,
Cameron.
okay.
Yeah, mostly.
It's no big deal. So earlier, Cameron and I, in our first episode, we talked about growing up as a ministry family, being preachers' kids, and how that has affected us as adults, and some of the hardships that went along with that. And so we wanted to talk to you and get your perspective on what it was like being, I don't know, weren't you like, how old were you? I'll just ask you, how old were you when Dad surrendered to ministry?
Let's see. He was 27,
Okay.
so I was 26.
Okay, so it was a
we're-
little bit later than
Yeah,
what I
we're
said.
10 months apart.
Mm-hmm. Because I thought, when did he surrender to youth ministry?
Now, we worked youth ministry as a team, probably,
Get the camera, the mic a little closer to you.
yeah. Do I need to move it?
You can pull it closer, yeah.
So we worked together with youth ministry as a team probably from the time that you were small.
Okay, so that's, yeah, it was youth ministry.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we did youth ministry because we took a lot of youth trips and you guys went on the trips
Mhm.
as babies
Mm-hmm.
and were basically babysat by the youth of the church.
Mm-hmm. I remember that.
Lots of traveling.
Mm-hmm. What influences did you guys have when Dad surrendered to pastoral ministry?
Well, when he surrendered to pastoral ministry, the only influence we really had was our home church.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it was the only church I'd ever known. It's the only church he'd ever known. And so
Which is Delta.
basically family influence. And then when he went to the first church,
Mm-hmm.
you know, the influence of the elders of the church and basically the deacon body
Mm-hmm.
is what basically predicts,
Mm-hmm.
you know, the response of the pastor. I guess that's the best way to say that.
Yeah. And I lost my train of thought.
I guess one question is like, you know, when it comes to the boundaries that you had between your family and then the church, I feel like the lines were probably really blurred, especially when you're
Oh.
starting off. 'Cause
They're
like,
non-existent.
Right.
They're non-existent. I'm sorry, the lights are getting me. They are basically non-existent in a young minister's family. You know, we learned over time that you have to have spatial boundaries and you have to communicate that to your church body as well.
Mhm.
But, you know, you're so excited about going in and trying to help a church grow and you're excited about your own family and wanting things
Right.
in the church for your own children and for, you know, wanting ministries to develop and grow. That basically it's your whole life.
Mhm.
Like you eat, breathe, sleep, drink ministry.
Yeah.
It's not something you turn on and turn off.
Yeah.
It's 24-hour calling and it is a high calling.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a lot that's expected of a ministry family.
Yeah.
And the boundaries are pretty much non-existent, but they shouldn't be.
Yeah.
Right.
There should be boundaries in place, and you learn that as you grow.
I was
Yeah.
going to say, if y'all had been a little bit older when he surrendered to pastoral ministry, do you think those early church experiences would have been different?
Oh, definitely. Yeah. I
Mhm.
mean, you know, I think everybody, no matter what field you're in, what career you're in, you know, as you grow
Mm-hmm.
in wisdom and experience, you know, you have a different viewpoint.
Mm-hmm.
And I think even as a teacher or myself as a nurse, Cameron as an entrepreneur.
Well, technically, nurse practitioner.
Oh, yeah, nurse practitioner. I'm
Mhm.
sorry.
Mhm.
You know, we all can look back and say, you know, I learned that this works better.
Mm-hmm.
This is
Yeah.
a better way to do this. And not necessarily that what you did in the past was bad or that it was wrong,
Yeah.
but that this was a better avenue to take.
I mean,
A lot of our previous episode weighed heavily on our experience at the church that we were at the longest.
Right.
So I guess that would be the second church our family
Yeah, that
was
was our
at.
second church.
Mhm.
Because we're only We've only been to 4 churches.
4 churches, yeah.
The church we're at now is our 4th.
Mm-hmm. The second church we were at for like, what, 10 years?
Almost 10 years.
Almost 10
I think
years.
it was 9 years and 10 months. Almost 10 years.
Almost 10 years. And we, from our perspective, you know, that was a very formative time for us. Like, that was the church that pretty much raised us, despite actually being raised at Delta with our family.
Right.
And it formed, that experience with that church formed so many of our beliefs now. And how did that church and that experience there affect you as a pastor's wife?
Well, there's always the good, the bad, and the ugly.
Mm-hmm.
I'll just be realistic.
Yeah.
It was great. I mean, there's relationships there that we formed that I have taken with me, and people there that I love dearly. You know, they're still some of my very best friends, and if I need somebody to pray for me, those are people that I'll call. There was also. Oh gosh.
Yeah, we get
It's
into
hard.
it.
There was also a time of, I would say, coming to ourselves is a good way to put it, where you realize that you have to have some autonomy from the church, that you cannot allow man to dictate what you do and how you lead, that has to come from the Lord only. And yes, opinions are important, and you know, people's desires and wishes, of course you want to meet the needs of the people, but you ultimately have to do what God leads you to do as leaders. So it taught us a time of basically growing up and being more autonomous, and it also taught us that pastors will come and go.
Yeah.
You know, your family
'Cause
should not be sacrificed on the altar of the church.
Ooh.
I
Write that
remember
down.
at some point when we were at this church, I remember either you or Dad saying, this will be the church where we retire.
Yeah.
Like, this will be the church where I spend out the rest of my pastoral ministry. And it's so wild to think that at one point that was the belief, and then we were pretty much thrown out.
Yeah, I think you go into every ministry with that belief, because you're going in, you know, with God's direction. You're going in with His calling, that this is where He would have you to serve. And, you know, honestly speaking, if you're going in all in, you're giving basically a portion of your life to this congregation, to service, and you go in with the mindset of, I'm here till the end, you know, unless God moves me.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, that particular church, God was not through with us there yet, but due to some interpersonal conflicts within the church,
That's one way to put it.
yeah. You know, there's a bureaucracy.
Yeah.
I mean, let's just be honest about it.
Church
Just like
politics.
in any career, there's a bureaucracy. And sometimes the pastor is on the end or the bottom of the bureaucracy.
Yeah.
And so that was an experience where we learned that although people say they love you and they're your family, and they will always love you, and you're so important to them, that you can be replaced easily.
Yeah.
And it taught us that family should be first.
Yeah.
I think there's a big misconception with pastoral families. It's something that I learned because I've always tried to be really involved and really busy in all of our ministries, and especially with kids and youth and stuff like that. So I think that we have this false sense that busyness equals godliness. Sorry. And that's not true. You can have all the programs and all the services and all the activities you want, But it's kind of like in a classroom, if it's just busy work and it's not meaningful, you can just burn yourself out. You can burn your church out. And ultimately, most importantly, you burn your family out. And that's what we did. That's where we made mistakes as a young pastor family.
Yeah.
Your dad never wanted to miss a Sunday. He never wanted to take off a Sunday. He just felt like if he wasn't there, that for one, he felt a lot of guilt and he felt a lot of pressure to not miss services.
Yeah.
But, he was raised in a church and he was raised in a family where you didn't miss church.
Right.
We always joked and said that he had a drug problem. He was drugged to church, whether he wanted to go or not. And y'all we probably raised y'all the same way, because that's what we knew.
I remember family vacations when we would plan them. It was, we have to be back Saturday night.
Yeah.
And when we would go on vacations, very early on in our family vacations to the mountains, it was, what church are we going to go to in the mountains? And I don't know if we ever ended up going.
I don't think we did.
To a church.
I think we talked about it.
we talked about it, but I remember thinking, are you freaking kidding me? Cameron's struggling. Cameron is struggling.
He really just wants to be
Get
petted.
down, buddy. You're okay.
He's hitting the mic.
Don't let him bite you, babe. Hey, fix the fence.
So yeah, that was always an issue, and your dad and I would fight about that, and he has definitely evolved in his mindset now about self-care and taking time off.
Yeah.
Just because of his own health experiences over the last probably 5 years. But
Yeah,
we had to plan every vacation where we would be back in time for church on Sunday. And let me say, I do believe that church attendance is important.
Yeah.
The Bible teaches us that we should not forsake the assembling together. And as faithful followers of Christ, church is where we find fellowship with other believers, and we find, spiritual food through ministry.
Yeah.
But even Jesus took a break.
Seriously.
Jesus cried.
He took a break. He went across the sea to be by himself, and he needed some time to get away, and
Yeah.
we do too.
Well, it
human.
almost felt like growing up in a ministry family that like we were the main support beams. And when you went into a new church, it was like, okay, let's lift everybody up. Let's be in charge of absolutely everything.
Yeah.
The kids have to be involved in every single activity and group that the church has. You're going to be in charge of Bible drill and VBS and a Sunday school class and nursery and this, that, and the other. And dad's going to do this and work on the grounds and do a Sunday school and this, that, and the other.
And visit all the people.
It felt like we were walking in with like assumed positions in a new church instead of being additions to an already established church with established responsibilities. It was like we were coming in and filling this massive hole. Instead of just filling the pulpit, we were filling this massive hole that this church had.
Yeah.
And that's why, like, Cameron and I, and it's, especially me, I'm like, I don't want anybody to know my name at church. Like, we go to this church in our neighborhood, and we don't talk to anybody. Nobody knows us. I don't want to sit by someone on a regular. We've had family members that actually live in this area that have invited us to church repeatedly, and I will not go. I will not worship with family members because they are established members of that church. And if someone is needed for something, I know I'm going to get a phone call. Hey, do you mind filling in for so-and-so in the nursery? Or do you mind doing this class for VBS and blah, blah, blah. And it's like not mixing business and pleasure.
Yeah.
I'm not mixing family and worship. I just can't do it right now. And I don't know if you feel the same way. But I'm just like, if I know you, I will not go to your church. Like, I had a friend recently invite me to church on Facebook. I need to text her. Her name's Allison. She's really sweet. Shout out, Allison. I will not go to church because I know her. I can't go to church with you. I'm so sorry. I know you. I can't go to church with you. I love you.
I think it's such a individualistic experience that so many people will never get to understand.
Yeah.
And it's like, it's just one of those things. If you've never been in it, you'll never understand. It's like when church has just been your everything and you've been so
Mhm.
involved with really, no offense, but without choice. It's
Mhm.
like, okay, so when I do go to church, I don't want to have any responsibility. It almost
Mhm.
made it feel more of a religious chore than going and experiencing, you know, your relationship with Christ and everything. And it's different now as an adult, you know, now that you have the choice. But of course, as an adult, you're like, well, if I don't have to, I don't want
Nobody's
to.
making me go, so I'm not gonna go.
Yeah. So I mean, it's just
Yeah, and I respect that. I really
Mhm.
do, and I understand it. I think it's unfortunate
Mhm.
that
hmm
many pastors' children get to a place where they feel that way,
Yeah.
because I feel like as an adult, it robs you of the connectivity that you need as young adults, and
Yeah.
especially, you know, like with having the baby,
Mhm.
you know, having a place where you feel comfortable and being in a church body that can support you, and you can find fellowship and community there.
Mhm.
But everybody has different needs, and like you said, when you feel like it was forced on you or basically pushed down your throat, you know, growing up.
You said it.
Well, I mean, you know, hindsight is 2020. We all know that.
no,
But
for sure.
you're right. You know,
Mhm.
when you said that about coming in and filling this huge gap,
Mhm.
a lot of that was our fault because, and I don't mean that anybody's to blame, but
Mhm.
a lot of
yeah.
it was due to ignorance,
Mhm.
just not knowing
Yeah.
where to set boundaries.
Mhm.
And you know, we all have problems. You don't understand something as a problem until it
Mhm.
is.
Well, and
Right.
like you were so young when you met Dad and y'all
Yeah.
started dating, and you did not grow up in a religious household whatsoever or
Mm-mm.
going to church.
No.
And that was Dad's whole life because his grandparents started our church on their
Right.
front porch,
They
which
did.
we talked about that in the previous episode. And so I imagine y'all kind of, well, not growing up, but I mean, your high school years on, I mean, that was your influence, was Dad's family.
It
And
was. Yeah.
And back then, our family, not that our family's not close knit now, but our family when we were at Delta is completely different than how our family is now. I mean, our entire family, our great aunts, great uncles, cousins, 3 or 4, you know, down the line, were all at Delta. And Delta
Yeah.
was booming, and it was a very vibrant church. And there was a lot going on. I mean, people my age now that are on their 3rd or 4th kid, I've got pictures of me and them
Yeah.
at harvest carnivals at Pappy and Clemaw's house.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And so I can imagine with our entire family basically keeping Delta open, because that's pretty much what's going on now in its later years. That was just normal for y'all
It
to
was.
just be on every committee and to be, you know, involved in every single capacity because that's what you were used to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it was fulfilling.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I think that you are drawn to what,
It's familiar.
well, what's familiar, but it's what feels safe.
Mm-hmm.
And it's what you're used to. And so it becomes habit.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think church should be a habit,
Mm-hmm.
but if you're going to have a habit, it's a good
It's a
one.
pretty good one.
I think church should be something that you do look forward to
Right.
and that you draw from.
Mm-hmm.
And I think you have to just be careful about your mindset.
Mm-hmm.
For sure.
Yeah.
You know, if you go back and you look in the Bible, God ordained the family in Genesis.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, we know that the church was established on the day of Pentecost.
Mm-hmm.
So God ordained the family before he ordained the church.
Mm-hmm.
And so we have to make sure that we don't put the cart before the horse.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that young minister families need to be aware that it's okay
Mm-hmm.
to say no. It's
Right.
okay not to take on more than you can handle.
Right.
And it's okay to not expect your children to be perfect and to be involved in every single activity. And I think church congregations need to understand
Mm-hmm.
and not expect as much
Mhm.
of pastoral families and pastoral children.
Mm-hmm.
And I know I told y'all this, and it haunts me to this day. You know, you have to think about your dad's ministry. you
I was
know.
just about to say, I was just about to literally segue into there wasn't just a commitment, like a time commitment to the ministry. There was a personal commitment to the ministry, and
lifetime
a
lifestyle,
lifestyle
everything.
commitment. Like no matter what, it was how we dressed, it was how we talked, it was how we carried ourselves, what we did, how we
What we
acted out in public,
posted on Facebook,
what we posted on Facebook, what we
shared, or
literally, and everyone in town, in our small little town, knew our parents, either from dad being a pastor or being involved with a church or 4-H and Saddle Club, or him being a teacher.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, everybody knew you guys, and everywhere. I mean, I know everywhere I went in high school, it was, "Oh, you're Luke Edwards' daughter," and I was like, "Well, we have to leave. Just can't do anything here." And especially when we were booted from our second church, our super influential church. And I feel like that was a huge hit to our ministry. And I also think it was a huge hit to our family.
It was.
Like, our family unit really crumbled.
It redefined who we were as a pastoral family.
Yeah.
Because it was very unexpected. There was a lot of sense of betrayal. There was a lot of hurt. I remember when we left that church, I remember telling your dad, I will never get close to another church family again.
Yeah.
And I hated to feel that way because you go there and you are supposed to mesh your lives because you're leading this group of people. And you're with them at their most vulnerable times when they're sick or when they lose a loved one.
Yeah.
You're with them through the birth of their children, which is a very intimate time. Another issue with your dad was that he was bivocational. And so, a lot of churches have to have bivocational pastors because they're small churches and they cannot support a full-time pastor financially. And so there seems to be an issue with understanding that it's not that the bivocational pastor doesn't want to do certain things, like a lot of visitation. It's that it's just not humanly possible when you work a full-time job and you're preparing sermons for 3 services a week, so, and then plus the extra ministries. So there was just a lot of emotion tied into the departure of that church. And
when I think there was a lot of grieving, individual grieving.
There was.
Like, I think each one of us went through a grieving process, and we all handled it very differently.
Yeah,
for sure.
We did. It was a grieving process. I mean, we were basically homeless, and
I mean, y'all were living in a camper in the backyard.
We lived in a camper. Y'all lived with your grandmother, and I know that wasn't always comfortable for y'all. And it wasn't comfortable for us. And I was in the middle of nursing school, and it was basically a nightmare. But we knew that we had a goal of building our own home. We had our land, and so, we didn't want to try to go buy something. We didn't really want to go rent something because we wanted to be where our animals were. We had horses at the time. We needed to be near them. And so the most convenient thing was just like, let's just ride it out. And so...
Well, and what's even crazier is that property was dead in the middle of where our congregation lived.
Yeah.
Like, it wasn't like...
We didn't move but 5 minutes up the road.
We really didn't. It wasn't like we were getting kicked out of the entire community. Like, we just got kicked out of our house. They were like, okay, goodbye. Also, I'll see you at the mailbox. Like,
well, I will have to say that they did, even though that happened in December. It was 2 weeks before Christmas.
They gave us a couple
They
months.
did allow us to stay until spring break, which was generous because it allowed you guys time to get through to a place of school where we could get moved out and everything. So, well, let me just say that God provided for us through that season. Yeah. That's the best way to say that. Because I don't want to be negative about that. I've moved on emotionally from that, and forgiveness is freedom, and like I said, some of those people are still very dear to me. But I think there was a really good time of healing from that church to the next church. And I know you guys got involved in another youth group at a local church in Yazoo City, and they were very, I believe, to be very influential in y'all's lives during that time period of
we can say their name.
transition. I just don't
Parkview
really
was
want.
great.
Oh yeah, Parkview was great.
You know, they really took y'all in because basically y'all were like youth with no group.
Yeah, we were wayward youth. We were on our own, and
Yeah.
I actually
So-
still I mean I'm still very close to those youth pastors
Yeah.
at the time. Like we've done we did a photography gig at a wedding where Tad was, and got to talk with him and Becky, and you know, I still have such a good relationship with their pastor and their wife, Mr. and Mrs. Lynch, and
they were really good to our family, and especially to y'all. I think it was a really good time of healing. And then when we moved on to the third church, the early years of that church were really good. They were really good, and they really loved on us, and we were a hurting pastor family, and there were several members there that really became family and still are. They're still with us now at our current church, but early in the ministry there, it was really good, and it helped us to grow. It helped us to build confidence and to be able to regain some momentum coming out of that hurtful situation.
I was not interested in attending that church at all when y'all moved the ministry there. Cameron, were you interested at all?
Well, I think it was a little different for me because I was going to school so close there, and so I was starting to bring some friends there for Wednesday nights and everything, which we all had a really good time with that. I mean, for one, it was an hour away on Sunday, and so it kind of felt like a continuation of. I think one of the biggest things was like it always felt like the weekend was so full of church stuff.
Yeah.
And so then when we went from being, you know, across the street or, you know, 30 minutes in the town, then it was an hour.
Yeah.
And that was really, really draining. There wasn't many youth there at first, and that was really boring to be very. I'm not trying to be mean or anything, but like as a kid,
it's hard
you're looking
when
for
you're
other kids.
a young person and you're going to church, and like the average rookie
Sorry about
move.
that.
Rude.
Sorry about that. Let me turn that off.
But I think for me, I felt very lonely because you were gone and I was by myself.
I had no intention of coming back.
I mean,
it's like I'm gone.
I was done.
I think that was my thing. I think I was very lonely going there. Yeah, I think it was just really lonely. But then once we started having more youth there, you know, it was really fun and everything. And, you know, my best friend at the time, you know, she was coming and everything. And so that was great to have
the
her
youth ministry
there.
really blossomed there.
Oh, yeah. God blessed it. It was amazing. We had a great collegiate ministry with a local junior college. And it was,
which you got into that because of Cameron, right?
Yeah,
because
well,
she was there.
Like she said, you know, youth attract youth. You know, if you have one or two, they're going to be bringing their friends. And so we just started getting this vision from the Lord that there needed to be a collegiate ministry there because, you know, there's this junior college out in the middle of nowhere, and there was other churches that surrounded that church much closer than ours, but nobody was doing anything with these college kids, and they were hungry for not just home cooking, but they were hungry for fellowship, and they had a BSU, but those years, I think we had about 3 or 4 really good years there with that ministry, and I mean,
how many did y'all average?
College
kids?
At our biggest year, I remember we would have 40 to 50 college students on a Wednesday night. I mean, they would be holding hands and just completely encircle the fellowship hall in prayer. We had some great times. Some kids surrendered to ministry. We had kids get saved. We had kids get married, you know, and it's a pretty awesome experience. It's one of those things that I'm glad happened. I'm glad I took that memory with me.
Yeah.
I miss those kids too. Of course, they're
Yeah.
grown now,
Yeah, they're
Yeah,
having their own babies.
full-blown grown-ups now.
it's very true. Especially the last group that y'all had come in. I know I see some on Facebook, like
Yeah.
someone just bought a house and
Yeah.
having kids and
Yeah.
everything. So
Really good group of kids.
yeah.
And they loved us, and they still check in on. Some of them still check in.
So, with how we had our very first church, which was very short-lived. Our second church, our most influential church. Our third church, we were a little jaded.
A lot of healing happened there.
A lot of healing happened at that church.
A lot of growing. A lot of growing.
A lot of growing. It was a little rough for me personally at that church.
Well, I do think there was with any type of close knit, family oriented church, there's going to be drama. There's going to be issues. There's going to be drama, and that's. I mean, it's just like with any family, with any situation. But it's just you just don't quite expect it to be quite as intense as it can be sometimes because you're like, we're supposed to love each other. We're supposed to be here for each other, but of course, selfish ways and whatever gets in front of that sometimes, and we forget ourselves and how we're supposed to act. But there was definitely some times there that were frustrating.
There was some bump. I like to say there's some bumps in the road for sure.
Potholes.
And I think one thing you have to remember, and I think this protects yourself from unrealistic expectations about churches and congregations.
Yeah.
Is that churches are not made up of perfect people.
Yeah.
No, exactly.
We're all flawed. The Bible teaches us that we've all fallen short of the glory of God. And we all need forgiveness, and that's why we need Jesus. And you also have to understand that not everybody that is a member of a church is a true Christian.
Yeah, we talked about that earlier.
And you have to remember that not everybody is being led by the Holy Spirit.
Yeah,
that's very true.
And so when things happen, you have to remember that you're not battling against those people. It's powers of darkness that work against ministry. And that's what keeps you going.
Yeah.
And it also keeps you very aware that, although Satan uses people to carry out his work, ultimately you're there because that's what God would have you to do. And there were some bumps in the road. And I mean, there was times I thought about quitting, walking away. But when God calls you, he equips you, and you have to just keep your eyes focused on him.
Yeah. And now that you're in y'all's fourth church, how would you say your ministry has changed from the early days of your ministry and as a pastoral family and now? One of the biggest changes, I think, is that this is the first church that Cameron and I have zero input in. Like, we are not involved in this church in any way. I tried to draw her
back in. She just wouldn't stay with me.
I did. The biggest issue is that
for a few Sundays.
Geographically, we are very, very far away from this church. And it is a very unnatural trip. Like, it's just so out of the way to go be a part of that congregation. And
it's a very different experience for your dad and I because this is, like you said, this is the first church that we've been at that y'all have not been there. As far as boundaries, we take vacations now.
Yeah.
And we take off on Sundays. It's okay to be sick on a Sunday.
Yeah.
I remember your dad going to church throwing up.
Oh my gosh.
Because there was a program, and he felt like he had to be there. And of course, his health has changed and, he retired and then he came back out of retirement and went back to work this year. Just because he just really wanted to. He has such a heart for young people. And that opportunity was just meant for him. So, there's definitely a different vibe. Every church has its niche and has its ministries and has its special needs. And we are really kind of just in the formative phase at this church.
Because y'all have been here for how long?
I believe 3 years.
Yeah. It's still very new.
Yeah. We're past the getting to know you phase. And God's really grown the church a lot over the last couple of months. We had a few bumps in the road, but now He has put us on a smooth path, and lots of new families coming in, and just really excited about the work. Quite a few kids coming in, and youth, and just a vibrant group of people that are willing to serve and really want to see things happen. But you also have an awareness that at any point that could change.
Yeah.
And that every pastor is replaceable.
Yeah.
So I think it's a level of maturity that's different.
Yeah.
For sure.
You know, you go in wholeheartedly with the understanding that God could change this at any time, or someone could change this at any time.
Yeah.
And you just have to be okay with that. And you have to have realistic expectations.
Yeah. It's like you've over the years you build up this armor. You're like, I'm going into this fully prepared for whatever may happen, but I am still protecting myself at the end of the day, that like if I do get burned, like I will be okay, and I can move on.
Well, I told you both growing up, and I don't know how many times I told you, above all else, guard your heart.
For sure.
With people, you know, when you were young and you were in relationships and you were dating, I remember always telling you, guard your heart, because you don't know what people will do, how people will treat you. But we're not there because people have called us to be there. We're there because that's where God has told us to go and to serve. And we will be there until He tells us to leave. And will there be another church? I don't know.
Yeah.
Dad's getting kind of close to the retirement years, but I don't know that pastors ever retire.
Yeah.
Some do.
Well, he already tried to retire from teaching. And he's back.
You know, I think God will always have your dad's hand in some type of ministry, just because he loves people.
Yeah.
And he loves the Lord. But yeah, we definitely have a new set of rules and how we function as a couple. We've learned the wisdom. We still have a lot to learn.
Yeah.
You never stop learning.
Right.
If you ever feel like you've arrived, then you've not.
You're so far from it at that point.
But yeah, we've learned a lot. We still have a lot to learn. But we're looking forward to what the future holds, whatever that may be.
To wrap up this episode, what is one piece of advice that you would give a young couple who is surrendering to ministry and they have children?
Oh, one of the first things I would say is you need to, like I said, do not sacrifice your family on the altar of the church. You need to have distinct boundaries for what you allow other people to, for ways that you allow other people to affect your children. People should not be allowed to say whatever they want to about your children just because you're the pastor family. And I think having realistic expectations for your kids, not expecting them to be perfect, not expecting them to be involved in every single aspect of the church. We don't expect our kids to participate in every single aspect of a school. You know, they're individual beings. God made us with individual desires and talents and gifts, but yet in the church we expect you to do everything. And so that's just wrong. And also, you know, taking family time. It's okay to miss a Sunday. You know,
She said
dude.
I said you said it.
Yeah, I mean, it's okay. It's okay to take your family on vacation and go and take a break, because you can't lead people if you're burnt out. And I think that's where we were just not smart, you know, growing up in the ministry, is that we needed to do more self-care. And that's something you learn as you get older.
For sure.
Wow.
Very wise.
I know.
That was good.
Well, thank you so much, Mom, for coming here today and talking with us.
Thank you.
We hope you guys enjoyed it, and we'll see you on the next episode. Bye.
Bye.
It was fun.